Avram Iancu, known in history as Carpathian Mountains, the Prince of the Mountains, remains one of the most beloved and honestly tragic heroes of Romania. His life story is not only that of a revolutionary leader, but of a man whose existence became the reflection of a nation's suffering, hope, and awakening. Born in an age when freedom was a dream and injustice a daily reality, Iancu rose from humble origins to stand against empires. His courage and his sorrow, his victories and his loneliness, have turned him into a symbol, the living soul of a people who refuse to bow down. He was born in 1824, in the small mountain village of Vidra de Sus, in the Carpathian Mountains of Transylvania. His family was modest, peasants who lived from hard work and faith. His father, Alexandru Iancu, was a respected village elder. His mother, Maria, was known for her wisdom and deep compassion. Life in the mountains was harsh but honest. From a young age, Avram learned the value of dignity, justice, and perseverance. While the world around him was divided by class and privilege, the mountains taught him equality, that every man's worth lay in his soul, not in his title. In those days, Transylvania was part of the Habsburg Empire, ruled by Austrian and Hungarian elites. The Romanians, who formed the majority of the population, had no political rights. They were peasants, denied representation and treated as second-class subjects. Their language was banned from public life, their faith marginalized, and their history ignored. In such an unjust world, young Iancu's sense of fairness burned fiercely. He studied hard, determined to rise above the chains of poverty, not for himself, but for his people. His parents made great sacrifices to send him to school. After finishing his local studies, he attended the Law Academy in Cluj, a city alive with new revolutionary ideas spreading across Europe. Liberty, equality, and national identity. At the academy, Avram Iancu discovered a new world of books, philosophy, and debate. He met young intellectuals who dreamed of justice and progress. The ideals of the French Revolution inspired them all, but for Iancu, freedom was not an abstract concept. He had seen his people suffering with his own eyes. As he studied law, he began to understand how deeply injustice was built into the system itself, how laws were written to serve the powerful while crushing the weak. He dreamed of using his knowledge to fight for those who had no voice. His passion, combined with his intelligence, made him a natural leader among his peers. Yet he remained humble, a mountain soul in the midst of scholars. Then came 1848, the year that changed everything. Across Europe, revolutions erupted like wildfire. From Paris to Vienna, from Berlin to Budapest, people rose up demanding liberty and rights. The winds of change swept into Transylvania as well. The Hungarians declared their revolution against Austrian rule, demanding independence and national rights. But within their own movement, they denied those same rights to the Romanians of Transylvania, who made up the majority. The Hungarian Revolution wanted to absorb Transylvania into a unified Hungarian state, ignoring the Romanian voice entirely. For Iancu and his fellow Romanian leaders, this was unacceptable. Together with figures like Simeon Barnuțiu, Andrei Șaguna, and Ioan Buteanu, he called for unity among Romanians. In May 1848, at the Great National Assembly of Blaj, more than 40,000 Romanians gathered, peasants, priests, and students standing together under the open sky. The crowd's roar of hope filled the plains. When Avram Iancu spoke, his words were fire. "We do not ask for favors," he declared. "We demand our rights as men and as a nation." His voice carried across the field like thunder. For the first time, the forgotten people of Transylvania felt seen, felt powerful. Iancu became their hero, the living symbol of their struggle for dignity. But history is never kind to dreamers. The revolutionary wave soon turned to war. Conflict broke out between Hungarian and Austrian forces, and the Romanians were caught in the middle. Both empires tried to use them, yet neither offered equality. Faced with impossible choices, Iancu chose to defend his people. He retreated to the Carpathian Mountains, gathering villagers into militias. With little more than courage, old weapons, and faith, he built a movement of resistance. To the peasants, he was not a politician. He was their own, a son of the mountains who spoke their language and shared their pain. They called him Carpathian Mountains, their prince. The battles that followed were fierce. In the rugged valleys of Abrud, Marichel, and Bistra, Iancu's militias fought with astonishing bravery. Outnumbered and poorly armed, they used their knowledge of the land to outsmart larger armies. The mountains became their fortress. Smoke, drums, and battle cries echoed through the forests as men fought not for conquest, but for survival and honor. Stories spread of Iancu's courage, how he led from the front, refused to abandon his people, and even spared his enemies when they surrendered. For him, justice was sacred, and hatred had no place in a just cause. Songs about his deeds began to travel from village to village, turning him into a legend even while he still lived. But revolutions are short-lived flames. By 1849, the combined might of Austria and Russia crushed the Hungarian Revolution. The Romanians, who had hoped that their loyalty to the empire would bring recognition and equality, were once again betrayed. The Austrian authorities reimposed control over Transylvania and ignored all Romanian demands. The dream of freedom vanished into silence. For Avram Iancu, the betrayal cut deep. He had fought not for himself, but for a vision of justice that now seemed lost. The empire he had helped to save now treated him as a threat. In the years that followed, Iancu withdrew from public life. He refused official honors, pensions, or political positions. "I do not need rewards," he said. "I want justice for my people." But justice never came. He lived among the peasants, moving from village to village, playing his flute and speaking with the poor. Those who met him described him as gentle, kind, and deeply sad. His once fiery eyes now held a quiet sorrow. The man who had commanded armies now walked barefoot through the same mountain paths he'd once defended. He became a wandering spirit, both revered and pitied, a living reminder of the promises that history had broken. As time passed, Iancu became, well, a ghost of his own legend. People would spot him sitting by the river or maybe walking through the forests, dressed in worn clothes but still holding himself with pride. He never married, never really sought comfort. His flute sort of became his voice, carrying these melodies of grief and hope across the valleys. Villagers used to say his music could make even the strongest men weep. They saw in him the embodiment of their own fate. Proud, poor, betrayed, but honestly, unbroken. Then, one autumn morning in 1872, the journey ended. Avram Iancu was found lifeless in the small village of Baia de Criș, lying on a bench outside a peasant's home. He was only 48 years old. In his pocket were just a few coins, a flute, and some papers. All that remained of a man who had once moved nations. His death was quiet, but wow, his funeral was thunderous. Thousands came to pay their respects. His coffin was carried to Țebeia, near the old oak tree of Horea, another Romanian martyr. There, beneath the ancient branches, they laid the Prince of the Mountains to rest. The people wept, sang, and swore, never to forget him. Folk songs celebrated his courage, poets wrote verses about his lonely flute, and artists painted him as a symbol of justice and endurance. For generations, children learned his name before they learned history. Statues were raised, and his birthplace was renamed in his honor. To the simple people of the Apuseni, he was not just a man of the past, he was one of them, forever alive in their hearts. But, as history evolved, so did the debates. Modern historians re-examined his choices, his alliance with the Austrians, his military tactics, his later isolation. Some criticized, others defended him. Yet, all agreed on one thing. Avram Iancu's life was driven by a pure and selfless love for his people. He wanted no power, no title, only equality. In an age of ambition and deceit, his honesty was revolutionary in itself. Today, more than a century and a half later, Avram Iancu still stands tall in Romania's collective memory. Every year, thousands gather at his grave in Țebeia to honor him. The tricolor flags wave in the mountain wind, and old songs rise again, echoing across the valleys. Children recite his story, elders shed tears, and the mountains, silent witnesses of his life, seem to bow in reverence. For the people, he remains their Kreischerl Munzeler, the eternal guardian of freedom. His story is one of contrasts, triumph and tragedy, fire and silence, He rose from a peasant's hut to challenge empires and fell into solitude when the world abandoned him. Yet, even in defeat, he never lost his dignity. He proved that a man's true greatness lies not in victory, but in faith. In the courage to stand for what is right even when standing alone. His lonely flute, his wandering spirit, and his unbroken will have turned him into something greater than a historical figure. Into a timeless symbol of justice, sacrifice, and love for one's people. If you walk today through the Carpathian Mountains, villagers will still tell you stories of Avram Iancu. On quiet nights, when the wind passes through the pines, they say you can still hear the faint sound of a flute drifting from the hills. They believe it is Iancu, still watching over his land, still guarding his people's dreams. The empires he fought have long vanished, but his spirit remains, echoing through the valleys of Transylvania, eternal, proud, and free. Avram Iancu was more than a man. He was the heartbeat of a nation. He lived for justice, suffered for freedom, and died with honor. History may have forgotten many names, but not his. His legacy reminds us that true heroes are not those who rule kingdoms, but those who lift up others, who fight for truth, and who love their homeland more than life itself. And so, the story of Avram Iancu, the Prince of the Mountains, continues to live, carried by the wind, sung by the people, and written forever in the heart of Romania.